Okay, I am back filming again. Again, I'm still sick, so I probably sound a little bit funny. But this is day 4 in Minnesota. And if you don't know why I'm back in Minnesota, go ahead and watch this video. It explains it. But I thought I would take you guys along for another kind of daily vlog, and I can kind of show you what Mantorville, the place I live, or I don't live here. Where do I live? Do I live anywhere? I just live nowhere now. Because I don't technically live in Portugal yet, and I don't technically live here. So I'm a nomad, right? It's a nomad. Anyways, back to what this video is about. I'm going to take you on what I'm doing today and then kind of show you guys some comparisons to where I lived here in Minnesota compared to where I live in Portugal. It's really funny because they call the place that I live, Laredo, a small village. And the amount of people there is insane compared to what we call here a small town, which has nowhere near the same amount of people. But we'll get into that later. First, I need to go get ready because I literally just woke up. I fell asleep in my normal clothes because the time difference is really messing with me. And right after dinner here, I literally am like, stay awake, but I can't, and I fall asleep in my clothes. So I need to go shower and change and get today started. Okay, so since I came from Portugal and I had to quick pack my bags and I didn't really pack everything, I'm just gonna have a big makeup, hygiene products thing that I leave here at my parents' house so that I don't have to bring those stuff back and forth. And so far, this is what I had to buy: brushes, some makeup, nothing too special, toothpaste. My parents had an extra toothbrush they hadn't opened yet, a brush. It's just funny, all the things that you don't really think about, especially when you're in a rush, to get ready to leave. You kind of just pack whatever you think and leave, and you forget that you need all this other stuff. Not that I need makeup. I barely wear makeup that much, but it's nice to have. All right, I'm ready as much as I can be ready. I got dressed, got my shoes on. I am going to go for a little walk now to show you guys what it looks like outside here in Minnesota in January. But let's just say it's not normal. We usually have feet of snow and it's freezing cold, and that you can't really walk nicely because there's so much ice and snow. But there's literally no snow outside right now. Not usual, but I'm going to show you guys what it looks like, and then maybe a little bit of this little town that I'm staying in so that I can kind of compare here to Portugal, and it will blow your mind. It will seriously blow your mind. The differences between here and Portugal, as in Minnesota and Portugal, it's crazy. But let's get going. I'm gonna put my winter jacket on. Thank goodness my mom saved my winter jacket, so when I come back, I can have something warm. The jacket that was keeping me warm in Portugal, it was this gray, more of a spring jacket that is waterproof. It does not keep me warm here at all. So I'm gonna go put my winter jacket on and we're gonna go for a walk. Okay, so in this video you're seeing the courthouse, and obviously it's a work day, so the parking lot is full. This is so unusual. There's usually a lot of snow all over the ground and a bunch of salt on the roads to keep the ice from being too dangerous. And it's so weird to see it like this. This is looking down Main Street in Mantorville. And again, it's just so weird to not see snow in January. So here I am walking down Main Street, and we're coming up on what Mantorville is most famous for, the Hubble House. It is a restaurant right now that I think you can go to by reservation. I don't know, the rules keep changing, but it's a very old restaurant that brings people from other states. I don't know if people from other countries know about it, but it's a big tourist attraction here in Mantorville. And then here's the historical chocolate shop from Mantorville. And then you're about to see the county seat where Evo and I had a few dates when he came to visit me. And here's the park. We are gonna walk towards the dam and then the historical bridge. And here is some snow left that hasn't melted. Again, like I said before, there should be a ton of snow. There's a little bit of ice on the river, but for the most part it's so open. A lot of times rivers don't completely freeze over because they have constant movement of water, but lakes definitely freeze over. Okay, so on this part of the video, we can start talking about the comparisons between Minnesota and Portugal. And I thought it'd be really fun to show you guys like size difference of Portugal, the country, to Minnesota, the state. And as most of you already know, Minnesota is where I'm from and where I grew up. And Portugal is where my boyfriend Evo is from and where he grew up. And that's why I have kind of technically moved over there, kind of. And I'd like to show you guys the size comparison. Here's Portugal and Minnesota. And it's funny to think that Portugal can actually fit inside of Minnesota. So here's what that looks like. It's really funny because the populations of these two places are also extremely different, and it might shock you how different they are and which one has more people. So starting off with Minnesota, 5.7 million people in Minnesota. To me, that sounds like a lot of people. And we still have spots where like we'll have fields and fields, and you kind of have back roads that lead you away from cities and towns that will seem like you're in the middle of nowhere. And then cities are kind of the really clustered area, or what you would say like high traffic areas. And then towns are a little bit better. But then you have the rural areas where it's just fields and farms and it seems very open. You can see probably for miles, and it's extremely like, all I can describe Minnesota as very open, especially compared to Portugal. And then we have Portugal's population, 10.33 million people in a space that's smaller than Minnesota. Pretty much double the amount Minnesota has. That's insane. And what they consider a small village, like the place I lived in Portugal, it's not, I don't know how to explain that. It's not like, it's small for them, but not small for a person coming from Minnesota. There's so many people. It's like people stacked on top of people. It's insane. So just for comparison, having it all on one page, here's the size comparison with the population comparisons. And next, I'm going to compare a small town in Minnesota where I'm from to a small village in Portugal where I lived. So in Minnesota, the small town called Mantorville, the population is 1,111. 1111. And then in Laredo, Portugal, where I lived in Portugal, it's called a small village, and it has the population of 3,638, over double. This isn't like a great comparison because we have some small towns that have more, and we have some small towns that have less in Minnesota, and I'm sure the same for Portugal, so it's hard to really compare this. But for me personally, it's a big switch. The next thing we are going to compare is gas prices in Portugal to Minnesota. Okay, let me explain this chart. So in Minnesota, the average price for gas is $2 with 85 cents per gallon. And then in Portugal, the average is 1.67 euros per liter. So that's a bit deceiving because you have to convert the liters and the euros. So underneath the 1.67 euros per liter, I put 6.68 euros per gallon. So I switched liter to gallon, and then I translated it to American dollars. So that's $7.31 per gallon in Portugal. That's a big difference. It makes sense that public transportation is used so much more in Portugal than in Minnesota. Okay, so now let's compare temperature in January in Minnesota compared to Portugal. So let's start off with Portugal. Everyone's always texting me when I was there about, oh, I bet the weather is so warm. I can't talk. The weather is so warm and that you're enjoying it. And it is true, it's a lot warmer in Portugal in January than Minnesota. The average temp in Portugal in January is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 13 degrees Celsius. But the difference is Minnesota is a very dry place and Portugal is humid, like crazy humid where your skin never feels dry. At least for me. When I went from Minnesota to Portugal, it was a big transition. My hair felt weird, my skin felt weird, I felt like my body felt swollen. I eventually got used to it. And then I got also used to the temperatures where I thought 13 degrees Celsius or 55 degrees Fahrenheit was cold. But then I took a trip to Minnesota and realized Portugal's warm and it's freezing in Minnesota. So the average temperature in Minnesota is, I want to say it's 23. Hold on, let me check. Okay, so it's 21 degrees Fahrenheit average in Minnesota as the high, and the average low is 4 degrees. So, yeah, a bit colder in Minnesota. And like I said earlier, I had this jacket that kept me warm in Portugal. It does not even come close to keeping me warm here in January in Minnesota. So yeah, Portugal definitely has a lot of perks too, like your body joints wise feels better, but you have to deal with humidity, where Minnesota is a lot drier, so no humidity, no bugs, but you do have to survive the cold.